In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. And despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
That's me.
I have come here to chew bubble gum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubble.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, where I am still broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, always spelled with a K, but no longer from downtown Sacramento on the original SHR Media studios. Instead, my voice now emanates from the South Sacramento area, but only for a short time more, pending my final move to a free state. Be forewarned, what you're about to hear for the next 2 hours, or an hour tonight, consists of my opinion and nobody else's. I should care to remind you that the Saloon is serving stiff drinks, facts, history, logic, rationality, proportion, context, tradition, intent, and common sense. And remember, we don't water our drinks. Just like we don't water our conversation, politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all right here at the Saloon, where the speech is free, but the booze is not. These are the beginning days of 2022, and I tell you then, in 21, I'm telling you now, I am done with bipartisanship and compromise. This is the new age of modern political warfare, gaslighting, lies, massive hypocrisy, half-truths, threats, and all on the part of Democrats, leftists, anarchists, aided and abetted by their propaganda organs, the American media maggots. And they have all declared, we are on an open war footing against you. Speaking of war, 2021 has been the year of retribution, revenge, and punishment of conservatives by Democrats. It's going to continue, and it's continuing now, so let there be no mistake. I love my country, but abjure its leftist leaders and anybody who won't put America and her lawful citizens first, obey the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, uphold the rule of law, and embrace due process. Democrats, leftists, and the American media maggots say that makes me a white supremacist and a terrorist. You know what? If loving my country makes me an extremist, then so be it. Today, by the way, is Tuesday night. It is January 25th, the year of our Lord, 2022, and thank you all, one and all, for being here tonight. I grandly appreciate it. Now, I have to go over this very briefly. Tonight's guest is going to be Sean Lewis. He's the owner and co-owner and started SHR Media with Clint. And Sean is busy with other things these days, and that's actually the point of this show, and we will get to that. But I just want to tell everybody that we had everything on Spreaker, which is how I'm running the show right now, audio only, completely ripped out by the roots, and I thought we were hacked. And so I was a bit upset. That's why I couldn't start the show last week. Was going to do a show Tuesday, was going to do a show Thursday. It turns out that we'd been gone for about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks. And I only discovered it when I tried to do my show. Well, we weren't hacked. No, it was Spreaker itself. Now, there's a gal named Magda who represents Spreaker. And we, myself, Sean, anybody that was listening, we got in contact with Spreaker and said, help, 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 help. We've been hacked. So it turns out that she sent this email. I've recovered the account for you. Our anti-spam program that is used on the platform sometimes removes accounts that may have fit some of the markers to prevent people from creating spam accounts on the platform. We've now made sure your account will not be removed for this reason. Note, please, for this reason, and to have it bypass your account to prevent this from happening again. The account has been recovered. Please note it will take a few hours for the content to be fully recovered and available. As far as I can tell, it is fully recovered and it is available to everybody. But note clearly the what I would consider to be the equivocation on that. And also please note that everything was fine for quite some time until, for whatever reason, this occurred. And I just get the feeling there's something more to this that Spreaker isn't saying. Now, you can read into that what you will. But there's something more going on than meets the eye. So let's do this first, because I haven't done this in quite some time. And it's all new. And it's all changing. So
the Bloviating Zeppelins HeyJackass.com Chicago Death Toll Update. Courtesy of Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot.
And this information is from HeyJackass.com. HeyJackass.com, illustrating Chicago values. So, January to date, 2022, shot and killed 35, shot and wounded 147, total shot 182, total homicides 38. Oh, week in progress, shot and killed 5, shot and wounded 6, total shot 11, total homicides 5. Here's the great big numbers. Final 2021 totals, tallies. Shot and killed 794, up 10%. Shot and wounded 3,748, up 9%. Total shot 4,542 people, up 9%. Total homicides in the lovely city of Chicago, 848. So what that means is, in summary, a person is shot every 3 minutes and 11 seconds in Chicago, and a person is murdered every 15 minutes and 9 seconds in the city of Chicago. Way to go, Mayor Lightfoot.
Bloviating Zeppelins HeyJackass.com Chicago Death Toll Update. Courtesy of Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot.
And I swear to God, we will get to Sackhead Sean, but I think even he will laugh at this. These are times that try men's souls. And if we can't laugh every now and then, there's something wrong. Well, here's about 6 minutes of something that at least I find humorous, and then trust me, I swear to God, because Sean is on the phone right now, I just want to start out with something to make me laugh, if I can make this work, because you know me and technology. Do you know me and technology? Me and technology are like this. Not really. We're more like this.
Thanks very much. I just wanted to recommend a documentary to everyone, and then I'm going to go. It's about the men and one woman who abbreviated all 50 states down to 2 letters. All you have to know for this is that we have 50 states in America, and they each have a 2 capital letter abbreviation. But that wasn't always the case. Up until, I want to say 1973, and so I will. Up until 1973, every state had its own length of abbreviation, and it was chaos. Like Massachusetts was MASS period, Florida was FLA, Utah was Utah. They just dropped the H, not much of an abbreviation. But then the post office said, no, every state has to have a 2 capital letter abbreviation, and so they convened a crack squad of abbreviators. They assembled a ragtag outfit of rogues, misfits, and ne'er-do-wells. How often do well? Ne'er. They ne'er did well. And they were charged with abbreviating all 50 states down to 2 letters. Now, I read this description to the documentary, and much like you, thought to myself, how are they going to make a 98-minute documentary about a task that couldn't have taken more than 6 minutes to complete? Boy, was I wrong. It was an adventure. Ups and downs, ins and outs, friends became enemies, enemies became friends. They started off, they thought it was going to be easy because Alabama lulled them into a false sense of security. They said, Alabama, AL, holy crap, this is easy. We're going to finish before they stop serving breakfast in the hotel restaurant. And the boss said, guys, if we finish before they stop serving breakfast, breakfast is on me. And then one guy said, oh, I hope they have an omelet station. Just for context, the omelet station had just been invented, and it was sweeping the nation. And this other guy said, you know what, I'm not comfortable with the omelet station because I feel like the omelet chef resents you. Like, he didn't want to be the omelet chef. Nobody dreams of being an omelet chef. He wanted to be the chef. Now instead of giving the orders, he's taking the orders from your stupid wife and your ugly kids. And I think one day he's going to snap, and I don't want to be there when it happens. And they were like, well, why don't you just get Eggs Benedict? And he said, I don't like holiday sauce. And he said, did you just say holiday sauce? Yeah, why? Because it's hollandaise, you moron? And then the boss said, guys, I hate to be a nudge, but could we get back to abbreviating the states? We still have 49 left. And apologies were made, and an understanding was reached, and they got back to abbreviating. And they said, what's next? They said, Alaska. Everybody cool with AL? But somebody caught it. One man sheepishly raised his hand and said, sir, I think we might have used that one before. Are you sure? I'm pretty sure. Well, let's check the minutes. Dottie, read the minutes back to us, hon. Dottie was the wisecracking secretary. Every 1970s office had a wisecracking secretary, and this one's name was Dottie. And Dottie was a pistol. You would love, she was a real hot ticket. Dottie, listen to what Dottie said. They said, Dottie, read the minutes. How Dottie is this? He said, read the minutes back to us. This is so Dottie. And she goes, you mean the minute? Oh, Dottie. Dottie, what are we going to do with you? Spank my ass and make me a martini? Dottie, you're incorrigible. Now read the minutes back to us, you randy minx. And she said, it's hollandaise, you moron. Et tu, Dottie. How do you know Shakespeare? You don't know hollandaise. That's a paradox. Alaska AL, Alabama AL. We did use that one before, boss. And the boss said, guys, not a big deal. We'll come back to it. It's not going to happen again. Certainly not going to happen 27 more times. Foreshadowing. So what's next? Arizona, AI. There we go. We're back on track. Next, Arkansas. Shit. No, we'll come back to it. It's not going to happen again. What's next? California, CA. There we go. Next, Colorado, CO. Momentum, Connecticut. We are screwed. Somebody needs a drink. Not now, Dottie. Not now, you vulgar lush. By the time they got to Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, followed by Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, and Missouri, shots were fired. They were at each other's throats. So they did what any savvy business would do. They hired a consultant. They brought in a contractor. I'm sorry, not a contractor, a contractor. A man... A man who made words smaller by combining them or apostrophizing them. And this guy was the best. He was a legend within that world. Like, you wouldn't know his name, but you know his work. Like, he wrote such timeless classics as O'Clock. Many years ago, people would say it's 9 of the clock. It's 10 of the clock. This visionary said, we don't need the I can do that with a sky comma. He also wrote would've, could've, should've, the holy trinity of regret. He wrote the very innovative we'd've. He looked at we would have and said, I can do that in half the letters. And he was not without controversy. He also wrote the most controversial contraction of all time. He wrote won't. People said, how are you going to abbreviate will not use a single L? And he said, watch me. Are you saying I won't be able to do it? I just did. Thank you very much, everybody.
So I got to start off with some humor. That was from Conan O'Brien. I started watching Conan O'Brien in retrospect. I never watched him when he was live, when I really should have, but didn't. And I think I missed out. That was a wonderful, wonderful show. In any event, Sackhead Sean, do you happen to be there, sir?
I do.
Was that funny? Did you at least proffer a glimmer of a guffaw?
Yes. I don't know who the comedian was, but yeah,
Oh, shit. You're going to go make me look now, aren't you?
Uh-huh.
Oh, crap. Okay, I'll have to get back to you after during the break because I can't remember who it is.
But Conan back in the day was amazing. The last year or so that he was on TNT or TABS, I forget which one he was on, TBS.
Yeah, TBS.
He started to get a little preachy. But when he was just doing comedy to do comedy, he was at the top of his game, and his game was immaculate. Just some great skits. I've always loved Conan, and that skit alone was pretty freaking hysterical. So
I should have appreciated him while I was live. I didn't. When you putz around on the internet, you find all sorts of crazy things, and this is one thing that I've been wanting to play for quite some time. The other thing I've discovered is that through Spreaker, and you and I became well acquainted going through this Spreaker thing again, because once discovering that, okay, let me give Sackhead Sean some props. Let me give Sackhead Sean some big props. Let me give Sackhead Sean some really big, major, big ol' hanging props. Because last Tuesday and Thursday, I tried to get a show going. Nope, not going to happen because I couldn't log in.
Right.
And I thought, okay, well, I couldn't log into Spreaker. And to make matters worse, I mean, I could go into a major diatribe. I won't. But the bottom line is, it's like trying to take the battery out of a 1983 BMW R100 RT and change the battery. Because you can't just take the battery out. What you have to do is you have to take the brake reservoir out. To take the brake reservoir out, you have to take the battery box out. To take the battery box out, you had to take some of the lines out, to take some of the lines out, and you know how that goes. So basically what happened is one thing led to another, and eventually we sent a missive to Spreaker. Magda at Spreaker was very responsive. We didn't get hacked, and it turns out that Spreaker just didn't like us for whatever reason, but Magda promises that, okay, this won't happen again, but it just seems really weird that out of nowhere... somehow,
and as we saw, Spreaker was acquired by iHeart Media, which is iHeartRadio.
Yeah, maybe I got this wrong. Maybe I got it backwards. Maybe you know. Didn't Spreaker either bought Blog Talk Radio or Blog Talk Radio bought Spreaker? One of the two.
I believe it was the other way around. I believe that Spreaker bought Blog Talk.
Okay, and then iHeart waltzed in and purchased Spreaker.
Yes, and iHeartRadio, for people that don't know, the CEO is a guy named Bob Pittman. He was big in starting MTV, apparently.
Really?
He also was a CEO of AOL, America Online, for all you young folks out there. Yeah, I just shut a whole bunch of people down.
Yeah.
Let's see. He was CEO of Six Flags, Quantum Media, Century 21 Real Estate, Time Warner Enterprises.
Holy crap.
So there you go. And AOL Time Warner, who's owned by Comcast, who's owned by, if I'm not mistaken, it's NBC, right?
I think so. But wait a minute. Isn't there a bigger parent? Oh, God, this is also confusing. It all dovetails together.
Yes.
Doesn't Disney own NBC.
No, ABC.
ABC. Okay.
Yep.
All right. I got my BC right, but I got my A and N wrong.
But either way, the connection to Time Warner kind of tells me everything, because that is now Comcast. Yeah, I could see that flag being put up for other reasons other than spam. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe they just try to enhance the protection of their shows. But it would be interesting to see if there are any other conservative media outlets that were accidentally spam checked.
I've been looking around and I haven't seen any. So I'm just hoping that it was just one of those things. Now, one of the biggest things that I always said that I thought you did wonderfully on at SHR is when you first started the show, you had the option of going with Blog Talk Radio or going with Spreaker. One of the first things I noticed, because back when I had my hearing, before my major hearing loss last year, for whatever the fuck reason, I could hear the difference between the two markedly. There's a huge audio difference between Blog Talk Radio, which is crap, and Spreaker, which is good. So,
well, and I can tell you that when we first started on Blog Talk, they were running 16-bit sound, and you couldn't run anything bigger than that. So everything was tinny. There was no bass to it. There was no depth to any sound that came through it. It all sounded like you were listening to a radio station on a phone, but actually like somebody was holding the phone in front of the radio, and then you were listening on the other end. But when we first started all those years ago, we didn't have many other options. And the sound quality was an issue that I had early. I just didn't like it. And, you could have the best mic in the world or whatever, and it wasn't helping it. So then we went to a platform called Live 365 for a while.
I never heard of that.
We were there for, I don't know, a year maybe. Live 365 was kind of Spreaker's predecessor. Not the same company, but the same idea. That you could run. And the one thing that Live 365 has that Spreaker does not is Live 365, I could set up a playlist of shows. So at that time, we were running probably 5 or 6 shows on the network. And so you have some dead air time. So what I was doing is I could download the shows and set up a playlist. And it would be constantly running. So you went to the website, and it would just be running on a schedule.
Right.
And that part was great. Live 365 had some other issues. It wasn't very user-friendly. It didn't really work well with any sort of peripheral equipment unless you had like a $5,000 or $10,000 setup. And that mostly means the computer integration. It was really the early streaming of radio stations. So the hookup was very antiquated if you were trying to push your information through Live 365. So if you wanted to put everything on a computer and set up a playlist through one of the DJ programs, you still needed the right uplink information, the right sound card. It was very, very different. So when Spreaker came, and I found Spreaker, I think, within a couple of months of them really starting, we did a little, and this was just before you, I think, actually, BZ. We did a little trial where it was just me and Clint at that time. Our old engineer was gone, and I was running like 4 different programs. I'd run Blog Talk Radio, have that going in the background, Live 365, because we were still on that, Spreaker, and there was another little weird outlet that I had found that I was trying out too, and it was just a nightmare. So we eventually settled on Spreaker, and it was a good choice. It really, they seemed, I don't know what they've done recently. Obviously, I've stepped away, but they seem to be really proactive about increasing the quality, increasing the interaction, and increasing their software. So I really thought they had their shit together.
Well, it really sounds markedly, even me, who is deaf, damn near, even I can tell a major difference in sound quality. Because the one thing I discovered, you and a lot of other people at the time had your fingers in all the various podcasts. And what I mean by that is you listened to everybody.
Yes.
And then you started telling me, maybe you need to listen to this guy, maybe you need to listen to this guy, this person over here, blah, blah, blah. And then one of the first things I discovered is, you know what, you can have a great, it goes back to the messenger thing. You can have a great message, a fabulous message. Like, for example, Michael Savage, who has a great message, but he's a shitty messenger. Now take that in terms of sound quality. You can have a great podcast, and I know one that stands to mind right now that still sounds like crap, and I don't know how they get listeners at all.
Right.
But I find a lot of that stuff just absolutely eminently unlistenable. And if I can't enjoy the sound quality, what's the damn point?
Well, and it immediately, and that was something that I really had a hard time with, because who was going to take you seriously if you sounded like you were broadcasting from a tin shed out back?
Yeah, it's true. Nobody.
And the problem is they're not going to stick around long enough to find out if it's worth it. So, the thing that with Blog Talk Radio back in the day is, you got to remember, podcast was just starting. It was just a thing. When we first started the network, and I've told this story before, it was Blog Talk, and there was another program that I used to push the podcast out. I can't remember what it is right now, but the only interaction you were really getting was from other podcasters at the time. Twitter wasn't what it is. Facebook certainly wasn't what it is. None of that stuff was what it is. I don't even think Facebook was around yet, honestly. I don't think Twitter was either. I was posting our links in message boards, all of that stuff. And we were recording on one computer with a plug-in headset microphone that we were handing back and forth, and we had I had no idea what we were doing. And then as the technology took off, and it really did, and I will say, and I've said this before, and people have given me kind of funny looks, to say that we got into podcasting when it was in the ground floor was 100% truth.
No, that's true.
We were up against major media networks that had radio and TV. We were finding small caveats, and back when we started podcasting, smartphones, I can remember, I think the smartphone I had at the time was the Microsoft, I don't even remember what it was called, but it had the slide-out keyboard. It was 3G. Now people listen to podcasts all day on their phone. It's a totally different technology. It's so easy to podcast. Anybody can do it. Now, obviously, if you want to, well, anyone can do it. BZ's doing it.
Wait a minute.
But folks, if you're listening for the first time or you're new, you have to realize it took me years to train BZ to do this.
There is somebody worse.
There is one person worse.
Full disclosure, there is someone worse.
He who shall not be named.
Right.
Who is the opposite of Voldemort in the nose.
Yeah.
So it's become so pedestrian in a lot of ways that, when you look at one of the biggest podcasts, and it was a podcast right now in the world, or one of the biggest media outlets right now in the world is a podcast, and it's the Joe Rogan Experience.
Yep.
So we started doing that a long time ago, and that was before we even started doing any video stuff. That was a complete learning experience. And none of us had radio experience as far as running a board. We didn't have radio experience at all. But we met a good group of people that we were able to kind of share information with and learn together. And because you had 10 or 12 outlets out there, or 10 or 12 feelers, if something new came down the pike, you found out about it pretty quick, and we jumped all over it. But so yeah, that's essentially how SHR Media started, and how we started podcasts.
Well, that's a beautiful segue. By the way, I got a question. If segue is spelled SEGUE, how the fuck do you get segue out of a word that sounds like segue?
I guarantee you what happened is there was some asshole in Boston who saw the French word "segue" and went, "Oh no, that's clearly segue, and it means to go from this to that."
Okay, so we have Boston to blame. Okay, good. Important information.
I'm just going to say that I don't know if it's true.
Okay, all right. Well, hey, we make up stuff all the time. Well, the American media maggots make up stuff all the time. Hey, by the way, folks, I want to tell everybody that former owner of the SHR Media Network, Sean Lewis, is back right here in the Saloon, only in a much different form. And that's the purpose of tonight, though I did have a nice comedy cut because, 2022 and all that. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell everybody, this is grand. Okay, so there I was sitting in a chair. Spreaker crashes on me. Then it removes everything from SHR Media. Then the next day, we have power goes out at the house for, 30 seconds.
Oh, Lord.
And my computer dies. Okay, yeah, moving right along. Okay, so tonight, Sackhead Sean is a guest. So instead of him interviewing somebody else behind the SHR Media microphone, he is now the subject of what I consider to be a really important interview tonight, and a highly valued and important guest, much more so than Mackerel. So tonight, Sackhead Sean is going to tell us about his new profession, trucking, and that's the reason, other than, Sackhead Sean is a great guy, but now he is a professional driver, and that's an issue these days. Trucking is an issue these days. And
I do want to go out. I've been doing this for just 6 months. So anything I say could be wrong.
Okay, but still, if you want to find out what's happening with doctor stuff, go see a doctor. Except today, you'll want to see somebody else other than a doctor. Yes. Anyway, I'm hoping that Sackhead Sean is going to give us some insight into just how some of the trucking sausage is made tonight.
All I can.
And perhaps more importantly, why the job of trucking and the support of truckers is, in my estimation, absolutely critical to the survival of our nation, just as we're finally beginning to understand.
Yes.
And if you remember, and a lot of the other people remember who have been loyal listeners to the show, that's my dog in the background because now I'm in a house, not the studio. Historically, I have tried to appeal to the trucking community, and I got a good deal of them listening to my podcast and a good deal of the hits from truckers listening to me at their convenience. And then I also received some emails back when I was stupid enough to actually give my email address out before I got all the emails banting about liberal F&S words from truckers who would listen to me live, and they'd listen late at night, mostly on the East Coast, and some from the Midwest, and it made me really glad to know that they appreciated the show. They sent me some emails and whatnot.
Well, it is super nice that you can actually stream anything and listen to it while you're driving down the road. I listen to music, I listen to podcasts, I listen to comedy albums all day. Yeah. All day. That's all I do.
And that's the cool thing.
If I'm doing podcasts, I will load everything up into my phone and just start it before I go, which is why you see a lot of – Conan O'Brien has a podcast now. I know he's doing his HBO show and whatever, but perfect example. He does a podcast. A lot of people who were or could be on TV, Bill Burr, he's a comedian that could easily have a talk show on like HBO or something like that, something where he can cuss.
You turned me on to him.
Hysterical. Yeah, but nobody's going to give him a show because he's a liability in the sense that he may not say everything right all the time. If you are an owner of a major TV network. Because he's blunt.
Yeah, he's a potty mouth. He's like me.
So what happens is, he goes to podcasts where he can be heard every day or every other day. Joe Rogan, the same thing. Adam Carolla has a podcast. His show has gone completely podcast now. Another great podcast if you get a chance. So Yeah, so that's something that we truckers do to kill time because
the technology in the cab now is huge. It's major. There's no difference between the cab of a truck and all the techno crap that you can stash into a Mercedes or some other state-of-the-art thing. Yeah, I forgot to tell everybody, I'm not going to do promos tonight and that kind of thing. I just want to remind people of this, though.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And tonight we have Sackhead Sean, who started SHR Media here in the show. And I meant it then a couple of years ago, and I mean it now. Truckers, you keep America moving now more than ever. And that's basically the topic for tonight. Just to go back a little bit of history. For those of you who don't know, it was Sackhead Sean who met with me you're going to remember this, at the Starbucks on Stockton Boulevard in Sacramento, California, always spelled over the K, back in 2016.
Stockton and T Street.
Yep.
Or S Street. No,
S Street.
T.
To talk to me about getting back into radio, into Sackhead's radio, and we chatted for a while. I got through. I went back to my car. This should have been a note. This should have been foreshadowing because I got back to my car. Huh? Yeah. I got back to my car, and there's a big-ass ticket on my damn windshield from the stupid little meter maids and maidettes, and I should have thought, is that foreshadowing? But anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. I had earlier worked in terrestrial radio in the early 70s on college radio stations, a few AM stations back in Ohio, some AM radio stations in Sacramento, and then KFBK, where I worked for about 4 years in the early 70s. So after I retired from law enforcement in 2016, I wanted to move back into radio or something as closely approximating radio as possible as a conservative, just to kind of keep me off the streets from, stealing cars, raiding trains, shooting at highway signs, the usual stuff that you do after retirement. And
sounds like a good idea.
Well, some of those things sounded good at the time, but they didn't always pan out like I thought, like I hoped. So what happened is I ended up bigfooting the Sackheads radio show with Sean and Clint for about half a year. And then I got my own radio show in January of 2017 on SHR. So,
after a lot of nagging?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you said, if you're smart, you'll pre-record and not go live. So, Sean, what did I do?
Went
live, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So as I said before, and I have to acknowledge it again, it is literally Sackhead Sean who is here tonight who kept me sane after retirement. And I credit you then, and I credit you now. And I say that because that is no lie. So tonight I'd like to talk to Sean about trucking, the profession, the ins and outs of it, things that you expected, things you didn't expect, how things really work, and then with that background into kind of expand into the state of trucking today and why it is critically important for any nation to support its transportation system and truckers and, the people that bring you, well, every fucking thing.
Yeah, if you buy it, it came on a truck.
Yeah, which is really...
If you build with it, it came on a truck. It is astronomical what comes on a truck. And I definitely didn't think about it before I started. This is career number, 4 for me. I, like you, started in law enforcement back in the day, and then I switched to private sector, and I switched to managing security for casino. Got hurt for the upteenth time and was pretty much told, hey, you can't do this fighting with people thing anymore. You got to find a new gig. And I tell everyone when I was 19, I had the ability to drive with somebody for about 4 months in the summer on my permit, and I really got to learn how to drive. I was an 81 International cab over. it was my intro, and I loved it, and then I went into the career I went into, and it was one of those things that, when the doctor said to me, hey, you got to find something else to do, I knew exactly what it was. I wanted to go back into trucking. So I got the little letter that you get, and they have to pay to retrain you because I got hurt at work. And I already knew what trucking school I wanted to go to. I had a year of sitting on my arse recovering from knee surgeries, 2.
Oh, yeah, not just one, 2 of them.
2.
Oh, that's right, on separate knees.
No, it was on the same.
Oh, was it on the same one?
Mistake.
Oh,
yeah.
Damn.
They had to go in and fix a mistake.
That's right.
To research and research schools, research the industry itself. I followed a ton of truckers on YouTube. I followed a bunch of websites and blogs where guys were documenting what they did. And I really got a good insight onto the business and stuff like that. I didn't know anything. I just had insight, which is huge, Went to truck school, started in May of last year, and had a great instructor, 2 of them actually, a guy named Kelly and a guy named George. Both have been driving since Christ was a baby.
Okay, can you hang on for just 1 second? Hang on just 1 second, because I just thought of something that I should have said earlier. Folks, if you're on social media, before I forget, you can, Sackhead Sean here he used to be on media with regard to, the Sackhead's radio and the radio situation and whatnot. Now he's on Twitter and tweets about his trucking exploits on Twitter. And you might want to write this down because it's a grand damn old time. You can find him on Twitter at Greenhorn Trucks. All one word, obviously it's Twitter. Greenhorn Trucks with an S, where he describes himself as just a middle-aged man who changes careers midlife and is now documenting it for everybody to laugh at. Okay. And you'll find it, I find it. Well, this is obvious to me because I know Sean. Some of the people who don't, you'll find it witty, entertaining. He's got photographs. It provides insight as to what really happens in trucking. When he comes across fuck nozzles, he'll tell you about it. When people are nice, he'll tell you about it. When people are turd bags, he'll tell you about it. It's fun and entertaining. And I'm going to say it again. On Twitter, if you're on Twitter, and I would recommend that you do. Hey, by the way, I am so sorry. Old Dog is in chat. 2 viewers are in chat, so thank you for being here. But on Twitter, go to @GreenhornTrucks, @GreenhornTrucks.
And that's me. I'm a Greenhorn trucker.
It's a great... I find it, obviously I know you're funny, but I find it entertaining as hell. Because you write about things that you don't think about, but you write about them in such a way that they're engaging. And you've only been doing this for a couple of months now, I think?
Since September? Yeah, September.
Okay, so that's not all that very long.
Nope.
But you gotta go to Twitter and read his stuff. It's great.
And I'll tell you one of the things, too. When I was trying to get our social media going for SHR, political, and podcasting, it was really difficult to get followers and interactions.
Hell yeah.
I had to really reach out and really kind of pound that pavement. And one of the things that's awesome about the trucking community so far is, I have 307 followers. Not all of them are porn bots, and a good amount of them are.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But
Russian.
I have some unbelievable interactions with all these other truckers out here, and the insight and information that I've gotten and the help that I've gotten from these folks has been incredible. I don't beat it all day. Like I tweet a couple times a day. It's not like influencers or other people who have auto tweet or any of that stuff. So for me to get 300 followers since September, really shows you how tight-knit the trucking community actually is.
And I think that's, A, a good thing, because particularly now, you need that. And B, it's a good thing for support.
Yes.
Because 2020 was a shit year for truckers. Not like 2021 was any better, or 2022 is going to be, a stellar jump higher. But 2020 was crap. But it was finally the year that people began to understand, you know who's still rolling here in the midst of all this junk? Truckers.
Well, remember they were called essential workers. They were called heroes. And I wasn't a trucker then. I'm not going to jump onto that. And they were, right? Because you have to remember back in the day, back in those days, a couple of years ago, we were having huge shortages. Everything was closed. Grocery stores, you can only shop at certain times. I remember when COVID was super bad, and nobody knew what the fuck was going on. And by the way, if you follow me, you'll get my language too. So
yeah, they either like you or you don't.
It's getting worse. So it was one of those things that, people really, I think, started to understand and appreciate, like, hey, these folks are still out there doing this while we're all locked up. And, at the time especially, I mean, now that we have much more truth and information, you can change your perspective a little bit now. But back then, when everything was doom and gloom, and if you even looked at another human being without a mask, you were going to drop dead immediately, these folks were still running commodities all over the country. And they were essentially risking their lives in the sense that they were pretty sure that they were going to get it and probably die in their truck. Which, is the other thing that most people don't think of is when you're driving a truck and you get sick, where do you go?
Well, the other thing is
home.
What they discovered in 2020, and there were complaints enough about it, is, okay, you got us out here. We're on the highways, but you know what we're not finding? This is back in 2020. We're not finding places to pee or poo. We're not finding places to take a shower. Matter of fact, we're not even finding places to park or places to eat, because a lot of that crap was closed.
You're going to think of the irony of it, really. They are, these folks are bringing all of the commodities and the stuff that you were eating and you were getting through lockdowns and everything else. And they had trailers full of food, not for them. They couldn't eat. And you listen to some of the folks tell you, like they all the truck stops were closing their restaurants. Well, a lot of these guys, that's where they had to eat. You can cook in the truck, and I'll get into that later if you want. But, you still, sometimes you just need that quick dash in and dash out.
And you couldn't even do that. You couldn't even do that. Not in 2020.
But, sometimes with these schedules, these guys are dropping off, and you have one of the good things about what I do is flatbedding is most of my deliveries and pickups are 9 to 5. It's not 3 a.m., 2 a.m., 1 a.m. Most of these folks are. You're going to Costco, you're going in there at 4 a.m. to unload, and you might be out of there by 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. sometimes for the guys that are pulling dry vans or reefers. And, all of a sudden they have an hour to get to a truck stop, get food in them, and get off the road because their clock, how much they can work in a day will run out. And if you're stuck at a shipper or a receiver longer than you're expecting, and there's a couple, you just have to follow some of these folks, and you see how hung up they get. 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. You only have 14 hours that you can work in a day, and you can only drive 11 of those 14. So if you drove 5 to get there and you get held up there for 6, you have 3 hours left on your clock to drive, but now you need to get somewhere, get food, and sleep. And that, like you said, that doesn't include the bathroom.
No, and the other thing I discovered is I became familiar with railroading since about 1993 when I moved up to my cabin in the Sierra Nevadas, because the Southern Pacific and then the Union Pacific Railroad was, I don't know, a quarter of a mile, if that, from my house. And I could hear the trains at night. That's the old original transcontinental route.
Right.
Running a railroad, working for a railroad, is very similar to trucking, and we'll get into that later. But what Sackhead Sean discovered is that the SHR Media Network doesn't pay the bills. It only created bills. And am I wrong?
It was a money pit.
Yeah. Clint couldn't locate the time to continue on SHR, and, Sean had bills to pay. So
here I am.
You had some prior experience. You went to trucking school. How long was it? A month?
No, trucking school in California, the one I went to, it was a total of, I want to say 120 hours of classroom time.
Okay.
And that includes in the yard driving the truck. It was, 200. I'm sorry. Mine was 200. For me, one of the cool parts is I was able to forge a relationship with two of my instructors, one of which I talked to 3 or 4 times a week, ask him some advice or whatever, a guy by the name of George, great guy. And what he was doing, and he doesn't work there anymore, so he doesn't care if I say this, is if somebody else canceled because of COVID, they were staggering our time at the yard to drive, so you can only have X amount of people there on X amount of days, blah, 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 just trying to keep people separated.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody canceled their time or couldn't make it, I was usually, because you do a group class in the morning and then you do individual drives or whatever, so I was usually sitting there hanging out or close. He'd call me and be like, hey, this guy canceled. Do you want to drive his hour? So I was getting more time in
Cool.
because I was eager to learn.
Great. Fabulous.
I knew how much had changed in the 20-something years, almost 30 years since I last drove a semi. I know the rules changed. I know the hours changed. They went to e-logs. All of these things that I was aware of. And even though, so you go to school and you do classroom for a week, and then it's a mix of class and driving, and then it's mostly driving at the end. But what these truck schools teach you is how to pass your driving test. They don't teach you how to be a trucker. They don't teach you how to drive, how to live on the road. They don't teach you any of that.
See, you're getting to stuff that I wanted to get to. And Sackhead Sean, there's only room in this brain right here for me and nobody else. Get the hell out of my head. So, okay.
Am I jumping too far ahead?
What do I tell people about the questions that I have? I usually have about 10 pages of questions for people. And guess how many pages I have for you?
Probably 7, and you're going to get to 0.
No, 12. I have 12 pages.
Oh, jeez. Well, start. Let's go.
Of questions. No, but this is great. This is great because it's except for the questions that I've got, a lot of this it's all extemporaneous. What was the class size of the truck driving school you went to?
Small. There was only 8 people in my class. And of those 8, only 2 of us, well, I don't know, as of 2 months ago when George left, 3 of us had passed. Which is amazing to me because the skills test that you need to pass at the DMV, you do your skills test first, or you do your walk around your skills test, and then you do your drive.
Right.
All 3 of those our teachers went through ridiculously, repetitively. The walk around I could do in my sleep, and because they would just have you do it repeatedly, and then they would randomly bring you over to the truck and be like, all right, do this section, do that section, do this section. They were really good about mixing it up, throwing it at you. The skills test, and most people don't know this, and this is why I won't say the name of the school, they put marks on the frame of the truck that you could see in the mirror. So when you were doing your 90-degree offset, you turn your wheel, you'd back up until you lined up 2 marks, and then you turn the wheel the other way and chase it over. So they had a system to get through the skills test that did not require skills as much as paying attention. You were learning. You were seeing how the truck moved. You were seeing how it broke in the middle and how the trailer would offset and track or whatever. But you weren't like, it wasn't willy-nilly. They were teaching you exactly what point to get the truck to before the trailer would do this or the trailer would do that. And then the skills test, or the drive test rather, they knew the route, the 3 routes that DMV took. So they brought you through those 3 routes repetitively. And then they would say, okay, right here they like to ask about what that sign says because it's a little bit covered in trees. Call out that the bike lane ends right there but starts again up there. Things like that. So when I passed, I was obviously very thankful that I passed. And I had no doubt going into the drive that I was into the testing day that I was going to pass because they'd given me so much information. I had some knowledge ahead of time. I'm not easily intimidated, so I didn't care about a DMV proctor, but they showed us what the damn answers were on the test.
Okay, so what was the deal with the goobers that didn't pass?
I don't know. I'll tell you right now, and apparently a nickname that I used for one of the other students who is, I wasn't sure if he could tie his own shoes. Nice kid, but he was just really quiet all the time, and everyone else in class was pretty talkative, and he kind of stayed off by himself. Nobody ever knew his name, so at some points the instructor goes, "Hey, where's that other kid? And I was like, the truck school strangler," and he's like, "Yeah."
Wait a minute. Where's my? That's where it is. Wait a minute. If I had a producer, you would have heard this. Oh, you mean the truck school strangler?
Yes.
Yeah, but I don't have a producer, so that's not what you heard.
Funniest part is, he's one of the guys that passed.
Get out!
Yep, he passed. And apparently, because my instructor still talks to him, he's driving for one of the big fleets, the mega carriers, and he's loving it. So good for him. I'm actually glad he did. He was the kid. It was 90 degrees on the pad that we were training on, and he's in a long sleeve button-up shirt and jeans with a hat that was too small for his head because he had a humongous pumpkin head.
Oh.
And never brought water with him. And as I found out,
Jesus,
I know. Well, the second day I brought him a gallon of water, and he's pale like me, and a whole bunch of sunblock. Because I'm like, dude, you almost went down yesterday. I can't let this happen. I'm not giving you mouth to mouth. Well, and come to find out, he ended up catching a charge that the whole story was dumb, and he had just gotten out of jail.
Oh, jeez.
And he was actually a decent kid. I kind of talked to him towards the end a little bit. And he ended up living with his uncle. He was a younger kid. He was 22. Living with his uncle. And because when he got hooked up and sent to jail, all of his belongings at his parents' house that he'd gotten into the argument with, that he got hooked up over, they gave everything away. So he was wearing his uncle's clothes to that class so he could get his license, and his uncle was apparently like in his 70s or whatever, get his license and get out on his own. So it was actually kind of cool to see that side of things. And he was in one of those work release programs where they paid for his training. And you talked to him, and he was just like, look, I did that. I said what I said. I got charged with felony threats for threatening my dad, who was threatening to kill my mother, and my mother never said that part of it. He's like, so I did my time, and now I just need to build my life. And so it was like an interesting story. But, yeah, so I'll remember that forever. But he passed, I passed, and one other kid passed, and apparently nobody else could pull it off.
Were most of the people in your school younger? Is that the deal?
No, it was an interesting mix. A couple people changing careers like me later in life that I ended up being pretty friendly with. A couple of guys were only getting it because it was a job requirement. But they weren't like truck drivers. They actually assembled airline parts, and they would drive the truck to where it would be assembled, whatever engine or whatever it was with the engine in the back. So driving the truck was so secondary to them. The funny part is they could put together an aircraft engine, but they couldn't alley dock a truck.
Okay. Hey, Jack in chat says about that guy you're talking about. He says, "Oh, the Freightliner Frankenstein."
Pretty much.
And I thought,
super nice kid. I'm glad he did well.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. If I cross my fingers correctly, I'm hoping to have another guy on maybe next week sometime, maybe Tuesday. We're still in negotiations and contractual obligations. There might be NDAs thrown back and forth with a gentleman who's a trucker named Trapper John, and I hope to perhaps speak to him.
Oh, I follow Trapper John.
Yeah, I know, and that's where I found him because he's got a ton of followers and some good insight on. Offhand, I can't remember his Twitter handle. I think it's Trapper John.
It's at Trapper John 151.
151. Okay. All right.
Yep.
And so I sent a private message to him, and I'm going to try to see if maybe I can get him on the show because he isn't in the Pacific Northwest or the West. I think he's Midwest or something, so he might have a different...
He and I were both in Washington today. He goes coast to coast.
Yeah, I think he goes everywhere.
Yep. Super good guy. And if you want to learn experienced stuff from an experienced driver who really sells it well, gives information well, and shares his day really well, I follow him just for that reason. And he'll interact with everybody. He's really good about interaction. So he's a great guy. If you want to learn about the industry, he's definitely a great guy. He's one of the guys that I read all the time.
Well, and the other thing is that there are some people who are on Twitter that frankly shouldn't be there because they can't write for shit and they can't
usually me.
They can't get ideas across for shit. Yeah, but we'll get into that as to why there's a sort of a techno reason for that. But he, like you, has some great insight and great experience, and I'm going to try to see if maybe I can tap his brain next week as to what's happening in the trucker world, like maybe all across the veritable fruited plain. So,
and there's the other thing that I really enjoy, and just to touch on Twitter really quick, and we'll jump off because I know we're trying to move on. There's a lot of Canadian truck drivers on Twitter that I have befriended. One by the name of Irish Pikey, who is absolutely hysterical. Mm-hmm. But again, same job, different country, and a lot of them cross over here, or they did. Just, again, that camaraderie that's there. And I even talked to a few truckers from Europe and England. So for me, that's been worth getting on Twitter again more than a lot of other things. So.
Because there are some major unifying factors going on these days that I think helps to bring everybody in the trucking community together. Now, I'm not going to play promos, any of that stuff. I told everybody at the beginning of the beginning of the show, I'm not going to play any of that stuff. I just want to remind everybody of this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And tonight we're talking to Sackhead Sean, who is the former co-owner of SHR Media and decided to strike out on his own because working at SHR Media essentially just doesn't pay the damn bills. One of the first things that I wanted to ask you, because you went into trucking pretty much with your eyes open because you'd done it before.
And I did. I had a year sitting on my ass recovering from a knee surgery to research.
And the other thing is, so a lot of this stuff wasn't a surprise to you, but like you said about the school, it trains you to take the test, then you take the commercial test, you get your CDL, then you go to a company. Well, you got snatched out of school pretty much most Ricky Tick, didn't you?
I did. I got lucky. So my instructor actually worked for a brief amount of time when he first moved back this way at the company I'm at before he got his own truck. And he made a phone call for me and was nice enough to talk to my operations manager and got me the job. I walked. It was the first time, BZ, and you know all the jobs I've ever had for careers. It's the first time I went to a job interview in shorts and a T-shirt because I was called at 1 and said, "Hey, you're going to be here at 1:15 for the interview." And I was right around the corner. I said, "I'm not dressed for an interview." and the operations manager at the trucking company, because all of my careers have been uniformed, and you interview in a suit. The trucking, my operations manager was like, "What are you wearing?" I was like, "Well, shorts and a t-shirt." He's like, "Yeah, me too. Come in." And I was like, "Oh shit, okay."
All righty.
Yeah. So went in, had a good interview, and essentially got offered the job, and only because my instructor put a good word into me, and it's flatbedding, which, flatbedding, from what I understood at the time, it's a little bit more specialized in the sense that, you're working your load all the time. So a lot of the dry vans and reefers, they're pretty much full front to back, same products, bottom and top if they go to the roof. They put their load bars in, or now they have the airbags and a couple of other things. So when they pull up and bump a dock, and the guys loading it usually know how to load it, they put the airbags in or put the load bars in, do everything they need to do, and then shut it. And then the driver pulls away, puts the seal into her, and goes. And it's incredible. It's an incredible system. And those guys do that a million times a day. I wanted something a little bit more physical. I wanted to interact. So, as much as I love being in the front of the truck, I actually get a kick out of work in the back of the truck. I'm involved in the loading, what goes where, how we're going to stack it. I'm sitting there on my calculator doing math, and then, strapping it down, tarping it down, tying it down. All of that is on me. And I enjoy, I was just talking about this on Twitter with a buddy by the name of Ryan. And I was just saying that I enjoy working the truck. For me, it's gratifying. It's physical. I'll tell you right now, those tarps weigh like anywhere between 100 and 125 pounds a piece. And I got to put two of them on and work them. And if it's a little windy or rainy or icy and I'm standing on top of a couple of stacks of lumber, it can get dicey. But I've always needed to have a challenge. You know me, BZ. I can't do anything the easy way. I never have. I never will. I have to find a way to make it more difficult. Plus, at some point, my two goals in this career is to eventually own my own truck, and maybe get into some heavy haul or specialized hauling. So for me to walk in and get flatbedding right off the bat was like really a dream come true.
Jack Alexander in chat just wrote, "Tarping is origami for truckers." I like that. That deserves a... So thanks, Jack.
It's true. You have to be pretty creative. You definitely have to kind of plan it out before you jump up there and start throwing this around. And of course, my first solo experience with the tarp, I was sent up to Klamath Falls, Oregon, to a wood plant, and it was all wood that was going to be used in cabinet making. So it's select pieces. So all the bundles are different. Like the bundles have one square edge, and then the other edge is all jagged because it's all different lengths. And it's extremely high. It was like 7 foot off the deck. And it was when Klamath Falls this past summer was having 102, 103 degree days.
Oh, it was terrible.
So I am now tarping in 102, 103 degree day, standing on top of the stack for the first time by myself. Nobody's there helping me. I'm manhandling these tarps, which are black. So in the blazing sun, it's just lovely to stand on. I am sweating like a whore in church. And it took me forever. And when I say forever, BZ, I was out there probably 3.5 hours on my first tarp. Because I was worried about ballooning, getting my edges right, make sure it's sealed. You have to do the back different than you have to do the front. You have to tie it. You have to then strap it down to the trailer so it doesn't blow off the damn load. It took me forever in that heat. I was so soaking wet afterwards that I came into the truck and immediately changed clothes. That was my first clothing change in a semi over the road. Because that was my first day. And it wasn't even for a full day. It was half a day's work. And I said to myself, what the hell did I get myself into? And then, because fate has a way of being a sick son of a bitch, I get sent down to L.A. with this load. So now I'm a brand new truck driver.
Oh.
I had trained. And
do I hear grapevine?
I trained 3 months going over the Sierra Nevada mountains, all day work. And I had a really, really good instructor. The guy had been driving for like 45 years. So he was my trainer here. So we got a lot of mountain training in, a lot of securement training, tarp training. I had training, but this is the first time by myself. And my training over the road was absolutely none. I had to kind of figure a lot out on my own. But so now I have to go from Klamath Falls, Oregon, down to L.A. And just the series of events my first week out alone is going to just make you laugh. So I go down to L.A., and it is a side street off a side street that I have to get the truck into.
See, this is a SHAUN story, and by the way, folks that don't know SHAUN tells great stories, which is another reason that I wanted SHAUN to be here tonight. But when you were tarping all that stuff, tarping, that's a fish. When you were tarping all that stuff, were the guys on the forklift and stuff like that? They were doing the Muttley laugh for you, basically.
They were gone. They threw the product on the trailer and they bounced. They had other trucks to load.
Okay, so they didn't laugh at you. Okay.
No, thank goodness. So I get down to L.A. I go through the grapevine. I have no problem with the grapevine because I actually listen to my instructors and my trainers. Just set my gear and my Jake's brakes and crawled down. It wasn't bad. I was more nervous. Even though I'd done the Sierra and everything, you always hear about the grapevine in the summer, the grapevine.
Right.
And I'll tell you right now, coming off the backside going towards Sacramento off of I-80, I think is more of a challenge than the grapevine is. Because the grapevine, if you're in a semi, you can only go 35 miles an hour, so you're only in 6 high or 7 low. And if you set your exhaust brake, your Jake brakes, whichever ones you have, right, which is what I was taught from my trainer, like, hey, if you set this right, you probably, unless somebody stops in front of you probably won't have to touch your brakes. And I didn't. And you save your brakes in case you actually need them and they don't overheat. So I get down into LA and I'm like following my GPS. I'd already looked GPS overview, Google Maps overview, and I was like, wow, that kind of looks tight, but they wouldn't send me there my first time by myself and have it be ridiculous to get into, right? Like, who would do that? Right.
Okay. All right. Continue, because...
So I take a left, and then I have to take a right down the smaller street. Well, the local plumbing company has their 10 trucks wrapped around the corner, and I can't make the right. So I go around the block. I'm like, all right, the street cuts through the other side of the block. I'll come in the back. So I came in the back way and pull up, and I start undoing my tarp. The guy comes out. It's this little lumber mill. It's tucked into this neighborhood for some reason where they do cabinet making. The guy says, oh, you get a back in. So I naturally have to now back out, back into the street, pull up the street, and then back it into this little side street, which I didn't think about at the time, but I'm like, why the hell do I have to back in? It's a flatbed. You can get from one side or the other anyways, but whatever.
Yeah.
So then I have to untarp. Well, I'm on a street, BZ, and it's a side street, but it's a street that's a cut-through street for the two major roads that I pulled off of. I am laying out my tarps, which are the full-length tarps, 8-foot drops, 26-foot long, and 102 inches across the top, or 106 on these. Whatever that maths out to be, laid out across this road. It's 110 degrees in L.A.
The tarps are black.
And the tarps are black. I'm trying to fold them. Well, the problem is, unless you've done it a bunch of times, which I've done it a few times by myself, but there was always somebody going, hey, grab this corner, all right, do this, do that. So now I'm trying to remember all of that while I have cars beeping at me. My truck is blocking half the street. If a fire truck had to come down, I was screwed. And now I'm trying to rush and get these done. It was a shit show. I mean, it was, the only thing missing was like the yakety sax from Benny Hill. Of me like walking back and forth. Yes. Me walking back and forth, pulling this over, pulling that over. I rolled the first tarp up, and then it dawned on me that I rolled it upside down. I did the entire tarp upside down.
Oopsie.
So I had to unroll the whole thing, flip it back over. That was the second time I had to change. third day in the truck. Fourth time I had to change my clothes because the first two is because I sweated so much. And then I get sent from there up to Paris, California to a stone company that was shipping stone, and they overloaded me. And I knew they overloaded me, and I went to the Catskills up the street and found out they did overload me, and I had to haul ass back there. There was one guy left. They were all going home, and I blocked the gate with the truck because I was like, screw this shit. I was exhausted. It was hot, and I was running out of time.
You're not screwing me that way.
And I just laid on the air horn until he came out of the office. And he came out and I said, hey, you're overloading me. And he said, well, everyone's kind of gone home. And I was like, you better get everyone back because I'm not leaving. And fortunately, the manager came back, and they took care of me. They really did. But that was like my first 48 hours or 72 hours by myself.
Hey,
I was overloaded. I had to tarp we call a shitload. I had to untarp it, fold it in the middle of the street in L.A. It was 110 everywhere. Like, it was just ridiculous.
I want to get into way station stuff in just a second because you tickled my brain in that with regard to going through a way station, which I'm sure is a trip in and of itself. But I want to remind everybody, because I just now thought of it, damn it. If you want to call in and talk to Sackhead Sean, it's 575-208-4481. 575-208-4481. I'll put that in chat. By the way, also, I should have mentioned this earlier. Damn me, I'm not on top of things. If you want to get into the chat room, we have an active chat room right now with a bunch of people in it. Go to shrmedia.com, shrmedia.com, for those of you who just tuned in, shrmedia.com. And if you want to call, now that number is in the chat room, and I'm telling you now, 575-208-4481. And you're listening to Sackhead Sean. He's talking to us tonight about trucking. That is his newest vocation.
Oh, by the way, I will not answer any questions from Australians.
I think that's only fair. It's only fair. Sean, what's the biggest challenge you found to being a driver? What was your biggest surprise so far? Because you came into it with your eyes pretty much open.
Yeah.
But you're still a greenhorn trucker, so something must have kind of caught you by surprise at one time. What might that be?
So I guess you can load at 10 lumber facilities, and they all load different, and their procedures all different. The variation between, you can pick up the same product 1,000 times, and it's going to be picked up different every time depending on where you are. That's been the biggest challenge, I think, for me, is just kind of, rolling with that punch, because you and I both come up from a place where everything's procedural. When you go to this jail, you book this way, right?
Yeah.
So that's been just a challenge for me, just because it's just like, all right, well, and it can depend on the loader too, right? So you can go somewhere 5 times, and if you have the same loader the first 4 times, that 5th time you get a new guy, and it's going to be done different. So that's been the challenge, and it's not them. It's just everyone likes to do it their own way. And, as long as it's safe, I guess it's not a problem. A lot of places have ridiculously poor signage. So if you're going somewhere for the first time, even the second time or third time, in my case at this one lumber mill, you missed the entrance. So, that's been it. But I think the biggest challenge for me was just learning life over the road. Like I said, my trainer was all local. So when I went out over the road, I was kind of told, like, oh, if you bring